although Swami has said that the underpinnings for the golden age are there, that it takes a while. When a rotating fan is turned off, it takes a while before it stops. He said things like that, so we just have to believe. If you look at it, you think that we're in a terrible dark time. But then he said, it's during this Kali Yuga, or this dark time, that the inner life can move the quickest. That you're blessed to be born in a Kali Yuga, where you actually have the contact with an avatar. That if you follow a spiritual path, this is the most profitable time for you, the most advantageous time for you. So this is extraordinary time for all of us. What looks on the outside, don't get fooled, because it's just, when there's night, then the day looks brighter. You can tell what daylight is. And so when it's dark, you actually move very quickly to the light. So the inner life, the chance of the inner life brightening and becoming alive is extraordinary for us. We just have to recognize that there is a spiritual life and to turn our vision to it, because the chance of advancement in this lifetime is so great.
And
let me ask you about the obstacles to that, though. Fear, doubts. Is faith enough to sustain people? You as a scientist, you as a psychiatrist, of all people on a path towards Baba, you must be able to relate to all of us who have fears and doubts at times. Can faith sustain people during traumatic times like that?
Well, you know, the power of faith and the power of love, how do you define that? We can't even define how chocolate tastes. I mean, but to such extraordinary inner experiences, when that comes alive, you see, we have a chance now. An avatar is with us. We turn our eyes to him. Of course, we're going to have to go through all kinds of obstacles. That's actually part of the spiritual path. But the power of his love and the love that he opens up in us, the challenge to our faith, to deepen our faith so that it can approach almost any problem, the challenge to our balance, the challenge to our discrimination, all of these inner faculties are strengthened, and at this time, if we can just realize, how did Swami put this? You know, there are ages where there's such purity that everybody realizes there's a higher dimension and that God exists. Gods would play on the earth with, and at a time like that, Swami, I remember Swami was giving some kind of unusual reference here, that if you said a mantra for 10 years, it would have a certain effect. Then there have been 3 succeeding yugas, each one less bright with spirituality. And as spirituality, as the eye becomes blinded, more and more blinded, it would take less time with a mantra or with a spiritual practice before a person would have its benefit. Now we're in such a dark time where everything looks like it's such an obstacle and so impossible to overcome. What would take maybe 30 years of chanting, attempting to meditate for 30 years, it may take 10 seconds now, just 10 seconds, that if you can hold your focus, because the mind is so jumpy, is so fickle, is so interested in the negative, is so distracted, is so blinded, that if we have the power to realize that there may be something, take a look, just hold it for 10 seconds, the benefit can be so extraordinary. We're at a time now where the movement, inner life movement, can be very, very quick. And we just have to realize, overcome the doubts, at least try to put them to the side for a little bit, overcome, and realize that, yes, all the greats have talked about the same thing. There is such glory inside of us. There's such a treasure inside of us that, of course, you don't find treasure without some struggle, without some obstacle, but there's such a treasure that if we keep with it and we develop faith and discrimination and balance and truth and all of these wonderful spiritual qualities, we're going to hit it, and then the brightness of the gold will just explode.
For a couple of final questions. And Sharon, we're told not to proselytize. Yet how do you resist the urge to shout from the rooftops? what you have learned after having come to Baba?
It's hard. Well, yes. Once I had an experience with at the ashram when Baba taught me very strongly. We were waiting for darshan. We wait in lines, and the women are always talking. They're not supposed to. They're supposed to maintain silence. But this was many years ago. And an Indian woman was saying, "Oh, I'm staying in India, and my husband's at home with the children, but I want to stay longer." And my judgment mind was thinking, how could she do that to her husband and her family? Be here, and while her family is back home taking care of themselves, little children. And so I was being judgmental and talking to her and other people. And another woman was saying, "I want an interview. Tell me how I can get an interview." And I didn't really know. I don't know how you get an interview, but we were talking. I was giving suggestions. And then Baba was coming in. We had number one. This was many years ago. And we ran in and plopped ourselves down in line. And he went by me and he didn't look. Well, that wasn't unusual. So then he came by my friend who was wanting this interview. She was leaving that day, and so he came by her and she jumped up and said, "Baba, I'm leaving. Interview, please, interview." And of course, I never advised her to do that. That was a terrible thing, to call attention and to be so disruptive, but that's what she did. And he looked at her, and then he looked over at me and he said, "Oh, you want interview? She'll give 20 to me." But he did it playfully. "You want an interview? She'll give." And you have to understand Baba, for those who have never experienced his playfulness, he can be so funny, so playful, but there's always a message, and that was a very strong one, that you don't give interviews. You don't go and, you know that it doesn't work, and people don't. In fact, Sam showed me that you don't do that, because he came back and didn't cram it down my throat, and yet he was immersed in it himself, and he changed. And I began to understand the only way we can influence people in our family and any friends is by our own actions and our love. And if we're loving and kind and giving to people, they'll ask, "Well, what makes you tick?" And in fact, that's what happened with our daughters. They had a Spanish teacher in the high school here, and the teacher had all the girls, and she would wonder, what is with these girls are such lovely, we have lovely daughters. They're so sweet and so kind and spirited, and I mean, they're sporty, they're everything, but they've learned the teachings, or they understand the love that we have in the household and what a treasure it is. And so the teacher said, "What is it?" And she found out about Sai Baba, and she started coming to the meetings. So I think that's the only thing that can change the world, and the only way, in fact, that it will have on others, by our own actions. With my own family, it's the same. My mother would see how much love, and she'd say, "How much love you have in the house," almost with envy, that there was that peacefulness. And as far as your original question about Baba, when is he going to be known? We've come to him, and I said, "Baba, where are the people?" This was a few years ago. "Why aren't there more people?" He said, "I want quality, not quantity. Quality." And we have wonderful quality. If the center can be so small, 30, 40 people, but the quality of the people, the heart of the people, and the way they do service, and the way they serve one another, and the earnestness and the kindness that they have, and the real sincere attempt to improve their lives and the lives of those around them, that's the quality, and that's the only thing that's going to make a difference in the world.
Well, the idea that there's something so great about being alive. There's something so great, and if we can see it in Swami, then we should know that it rests in us, and then he tells us how to find that. And in this latest book that I wrote, I wanted to express it in the title. So I was going to title this book "Man is God." I gave the mock-up of the cover to Swami, and he just wrote something on it quickly. It wasn't until a year later I took it out and took a look at it. I saw what he did. He had written the word "with love" into "Man is God." With love, Baba. And I said, "With love, man is God." I said, "Gosh, that's the title of the book, So I brought it back to Swami. I said, "Swami, some people think it's a little bit presumptuous, man is God. Is it good to say, 'With love, man is God'? Is that a good title?" He said, "Yes, that's what I've been telling you." You see, it's hard. I mean, even though he tells us over and over again that man actually is divinity, that's hard to believe. I mean, man is actually divinity beyond any separation, beyond any weakness, beyond any fear, beyond grief, beyond death. He's divinity itself. And Swami is not just saying that lightly, he's giving us a path. And the path, there's a beautiful, I mean, his teachings are just filled with pearls, telling us about the nature of the mind and how it can be a limitation, how it has strength, but how it can be a limitation, how the mind has to be corralled a little bit by sense control and control of desire. Not by just killing yourself and turning everything off, but you have to have a little bit of balance. And then how you have to turn the mind into divinity and develop some kind of relationship. It doesn't have to be with Swami, but the relationship with divinity, when you follow it, it opens up the love. That love is enough to capture the mind. And then to bring that out into the community and to try to do nice things in service and to help each other in community. And in that, we build love, and also we get closer to God. We develop our character. But one of the most important things is we rub up against each other, and it's a time for detaching from ego and from all of the dross that's inside ourselves. Being with each other in community helps us become aware of our shortcomings so we can release it. And it's in the release, it's becoming open and released without anything, that we find everything. This statement of Swami, everything is nothing and nothing is everything, is very, very powerful. This nothing is the divinity within ourselves.
As we conclude this, do you both anticipate seeing Swami again in the form? And what more would you like him to do in your lives?
Oh, I want to, I hope, I pray that we can be with him again. It's hard to even describe the joy and the bliss of being in his presence.
Is it necessary for people to be in his presence?
Well, I'm astounded at how many people don't have that experience and still experience him, because you can be in his presence in your dream, you can be in his presence in your mind, in your heart, in your life experience. He can be there and pop into your life at any second, so you have to watch for him all the time. But I would say that people should hold on to him for dear life, and look for him everywhere. And I pray that I can see him all the time, everywhere, and everyone. That would be joyful for me.
And Sam, what about you? If you had, let's just play a game for a second. One final opportunity to be in his form in this lifetime. What sort of questions might you ask him?
Well, I've learned not to ask him a question. I've learned not to talk very much to him, because my particular relationship, when I talk, he generally makes my mind into marshmallow. You know, that is, he helps me understand how little the mind can really grasp. And he says that when you're with divinity, it's putting a limit on him to ask him for something, because as if you know what you actually need. He says, what you ask is like a little drop in the ocean of what he can give you. He knows what he can give you. So you have to be very careful. I remember that one of the old devotees who recently passed on at the ashram, Subrao, had a father who Swami said was the foremost Vedic pundit in the country. And his father told him, one, when you're with Swami, you don't have to do anything. That you don't have to talk, you don't have to think. Swami puts the thought in your mind, he puts the word in your mouth. You should realize that you don't have to do anything with him. He governs everything. There's nothing lost when you're with him that you forgot to ask him a question. It's like with God also. Just turn your mind to him. You don't have to ask him anything. He knows everything. You just have to be close to him. So you don't have to do anything. Just be with him. Secondly, with Swami, this old Vedic pundit said, every aspect of divinity rests in Swami. Everything that we've ever known or will know or know now about divinity rests in Swami. I don't know how a Vedic pundit would know that. But getting close to Swami, I have had that kind of that he is everything, that he knows everything, that there is no limitation. And third, the man has told his son that whatever your mind tells you, remember Swami is God. Whatever the mind tells you, remember Swami is God. This man, Subrao, who is an intelligent, educated man, and deep in spirituality, he heard his father say that, and he said, is that all? And his father says, what? Is that all? He was in his deathbed at that time. He rose up and he says, no, listen, whatever your mind tells you, never forget Swami is God. Because the mind doubts, and it's filled with all kinds of chaos and darkness. So here's Subrao. he listened to his father. He's sitting in a discourse. Swami is giving a discourse in the Purnachandra, and all of a sudden Swami says, and then this old pundit told his son, whatever your mind tells you, never forget that Swami is God. So Subra listens like that. And he said, and the son said, is that all? And the man rose up and said, no, listen, whatever your mind tells you, never forget Swami is God. And he started pounding on the podium, just like his father pounded. Subra looked up there and he just chilled. We have to remember that. The mind has a lot of power and greatness, but it has infinite ability to confuse and confound and add darkness and confusion to our lives. And that there is a light. Look at the light for a little while, because that light, everything is in it, and you don't have to do anything. Bask yourself in it. Listen to what he tells you to do and do that, but you don't have to ask him anything. He'll give you everything.